let's go and look at the other part of the Roman Empire, the Hagia Sophia and formerly Constantinople. Many know of the history as, well, once a church, now a mosque, fell to the Turkish Muslims at some point in the past within the last 1,000 years, if people are thinking just roughly about it. And this was a great shock to the Orthodox world, sent shock waves, both of jubilation in the Islamic world and less so in the Christian world, whether it was Orthodox or Latin Christian. Today, it's now a mosque again once more. And some interesting details that you include, things like the survival of the Pantocrator mosaic, the Christ being the ruler of all, the judge of everything, that is still there, despite having been subject to a conquest all those years ago, along with all the other art pieces. But people know it for that, but they don't necessarily know it as the scene for lots of pretty shameful internecine rivalries between Christians. Perhaps you can unpack that a little for us, Fergus.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about the fact that I visited there with a clergyman who insisted on going upstairs and spitting on the grave of Enrico Dandolo, who was the Doge of Venice, who led the Fourth Crusade and diverts it to Constantinople. And essentially the Latin Christians sack Constantinople. And there is certainly a school of thought that states that the fall of Constantinople is inevitable after 1204, which is when the Fourth Crusade, and that is not a sack by Islamic armies, but a sack by Western Latin Christian armies. There's an installation of a Latin patriarchate there. There's another major sort of civil war in the 1370s, and essentially it never recovers. So yes, the history of the Hagia Sophia has always been one of violence in many ways. A much smaller church is built there by Constantine in the early days of Christianization of the empire, replaced after fires. But it is actually the Nika riots, the great internal riots in Constantinople in the 6th century under the Emperor Justinian, where various factions of actually the sporting teams of the chariot in the Hippodrome, their chariot racing, they have 4 teams who are based on certain colors. These teams end up having political aspirations, running themselves sort of a little bit like mafia families as well. Huge riots engulf the city. The emperor flees. Eventually, when he reestablishes control, he realizes that the Hagia Sophia has been burnt down, and he decides, as a way of restamping his authority, to build it greater than ever before. And famously, when Justinian comes into the church, he says the words, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." This is greater than the temple. It is the dwelling place of God on earth. So it becomes a symbol of the aspiration of the Byzantine and then later the Ottoman empires. But it is, yes, it's conceived in blood, and it's about raw power. It's a show of raw power. And so there's no coincidence that when the Latins sack Constantinople in 1204, they commit appalling massacres in the Hagia Sophia. Actually worse than the violence that then happens in the Islamic conquest in 1453. The Latins bring in prostitutes who they rape on the altar. They destroy parts of the sacred Orthodox setup. They encourage animals to defecate in the church. And it's only when their kind of leaders take back control that they restore any form of order. Many people are massacred in there during the sack in 1453. And so, and indeed, Mehmet the Conqueror puts a curse on the building, saying that if it's ever converted back from being a mosque, then the curse of the Fatih, the curse of the Conqueror will be on them. In fact, Ataturk, then when the Ottoman Empire falls, turns it into a museum. Again, it's power play. This is the most important building in the city, and I'm secularizing it to show the power I have over Islam, political Islam. And then there is, of course, the return under Erdogan in the last couple of years, 2022. It's returned to being a mosque. Again, political power play. So the theme that I try and explore in that chapter is about power. How does Christianity engage with power? Because fundamentally, no building better demonstrates the fact that it can become a tool a symbol within the kind of push and pull of political power than the Hagia Sophia does.